I met a girl named Shelley through a friend of a friend. We were at a small get-together at my friend Dan's girlfriend's apartment. Some people were in the living room, but I was just standing around the kitchen drinking beer and making awkward conversation. Shelley stood out right away. She was attractive in a sharp kind of way, and she had short dark hair. She also talked more than most people there, and when she found out I liked the same band she did, she latched onto me for the rest of the night. We started dating soon after, and at first, things seemed fine. She worked as a dental assistant, and I was working in IT at a company downtown. She lived in a basement apartment not far from me, and we'd spend a lot of time at my place because it was bigger and nicer. Shelley had this energy about her that made things exciting in the beginning. She always wanted to go places and be around people, and she told me often how glad she was that she'd met me. It wasn't long before I noticed her jealousy, though. If my phone buzzed and it was a female friend, she'd ask who it was and why they were texting me. If I went out with friends and she wasn't there, she'd send me message after message, asking where I was and what I was doing. At first I thought maybe she was just insecure, but over time, it got worse. She accused me of looking at other women when we were out. She'd get upset if I didn't answer her texts right away, even if I was in a meeting. 6 months of this wore me down. I told her one night at my place that I didn't think it was working. She got very quiet and stared at me for a long time. Then she said she understood. That surprised me, because I expected yelling or crying, but she just nodded and said she wanted me to be happy. It felt rehearsed, though, like she'd already planned how she would react. After that, she kept showing up at my place. At first, she'd knock on my door and say she just wanted to talk. When I wouldn't let her in, she'd sit outside for hours. My neighbors mentioned seeing her waiting near the building. One night I came home and found her standing by my car in the parking lot, saying she just wanted a few minutes of my time. I told her it was over and that she had to stop coming around. She'd always act like she understood, but then she'd show up again. Around that time, I installed a security bar on my apartment door and added a camera by the entrance. I stopped going to the same grocery store near her place and took different routes home from work. A couple weeks later, she managed to slip inside my building when someone else held the door open. I heard a knock late at night, and when I looked through the peephole, there she was, holding her phone, like she wanted to show me something. I didn't open the door, but she stood there for about 15 minutes, saying she missed me and just needed to explain herself. I stayed quiet until she gave up and left. After that, I filed a report with the police. They said they couldn't do much unless she threatened me directly or did something illegal. I tried to move on with my life, but Shelley wouldn't let it go. She left notes on my windshield, slipped letters under my door, and even sent flowers to my office under a fake name. My coworkers started to notice, and it was embarrassing. I tried to laugh it off when people asked, but it was clear she wasn't letting go. One night in early spring, I went to bed at midnight. At around 3 a.m, I woke up to a sound in my apartment. I sat up, and in the faint light from the street lamp outside, I saw Shelley standing over me, and she was holding a hammer. For a second, I didn't know if it was real. Then she raised the hammer, and I rolled out of bed, grabbing her arm before she could swing. We struggled a bit and knocked over the lamp, then crashed into the dresser. Her grip on the hammer was strong, but I managed to wrench it out of her hand and throw it across the room. She tried to come at me again and clawed at my face, but I pushed her down and held her there while I dialed 911. I could barely hear the operator over Shelley's yelling. She screamed that I'd regret everything and that she'd finish what she started someday. I just held her down until the police arrived. The cops dragged her out of my apartment while she kicked and screamed. Eventually, she was sentenced to 2 years in prison, which was kind of a relief for me. Life slowly returned to normal after that. I dated again eventually, although I was more cautious. I made sure to pay attention to red flags and not ignore them the way I had with Shelley. My friends teased me about how careful I'd become, but I didn't care. I knew what could happen if I didn't take those signs seriously. Shelley still crossed my mind more than I'd like, but I didn't dwell on it. I didn't look her up and didn't check the news for updates. I figured if she ever got out and tried to find me, I'd deal with it then, but I wasn't going to let her live in my head forever. And even though her last words to me were that she'd finish it someday, I made peace with the fact that she was behind bars and I was free. My name's Claire, and for most of my 20s, I made a mess out of my life. I'd gotten into drinking first, then weed, and then eventually heavier stuff whenever it was around. It It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't fun like people think it is, and it nearly ruined me. I was lucky enough to get a wake-up call after a bad night, where I woke up in the hospital with my mom sitting beside me. That was the point where I realized I couldn't keep going the way I was. I quit drinking, quit everything, and started over. I had a boyfriend named Liam at the time. He was funny and outgoing, but he was into a lot of the same stuff that I was. He always had weed or something else lying around, and he never seemed to think it was a problem. I'd tell him I was trying to stay clean, but he'd shrug it off and say I didn't need to be so uptight. That kind of attitude wasn't going to work for me. Breaking up with him wasn't easy because we'd been together for over a year. He wasn't violent, but he was manipulative, and he'd call me over and over afterwards. He'd also show up at my apartment or send me long messages about how I was abandoning him. For a while I felt guilty, like maybe I owed him something since I knew how hard it was to get clean. But then I reminded myself that he didn't want to quit. He was fine with his habits, and if I stayed with him, I'd either fall back into that world or spend all my time trying to drag him out of it. I couldn't do either, so I ended things for good. I met someone new a few months later. His name was Ryan, and he was the exact opposite. He was steady, calm, and didn't party at all. He wasn't wild like Liam, and that was exactly what I wanted. We took things slow at first, going out for dinner, seeing movies, and just spending time together without all the chaos. Around 6 months after the breakup, something strange happened. I was cleaning out my dresser and found a small bag of weed tucked in the back of one of the drawers. I stared at it for a long time, because I hadn't touched weed in a long time, and I was almost certain it wasn't mine. I wondered if maybe I'd somehow missed it when I quit, but it didn't add up. Still, I didn't make a big deal out of it. I threw it in the trash and went on with my day. I didn't even tell Ryan about it. Then about a week later, Ryan and I had just finished dinner, and I was rinsing dishes in the sink. That was when I heard a loud pounding on the door. Before I could even react, the door burst open, and a group of police officers came rushing in. I was so shocked I couldn't even process what was happening. Ryan and I ended up on the floor, with our hands behind our heads, as they tore through the apartment. They were looking for drugs, and they found them. Not just weed, but baggies of powder, pills, and even a handgun stuffed into a shoebox in the back of my closet. They also pulled out a stack of fake IDs from under the couch. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. None of it was mine, but it didn't matter. It was in my apartment, so as far as they were concerned, it belonged to me. I tried to explain that I didn't know anything about it, but they weren't interested. One of them read me my rights, while another officer put me in handcuffs. Ryan was left sitting there, stunned, as they led me out of the apartment. The whole thing felt unreal. They ended up charging me with possession, with intent to distribute, possession of an illegal firearm, and possession of fraudulent identification. It sounded insane, but they had everything they needed to make it stick. Sitting in that cell, I thought about the bag of weed I'd found months earlier. Somebody had been putting things in my apartment, waiting for the right moment to tip off the cops. And there was only one person I could think of who hated me enough to go that far. The case against me started to unravel after the police traced the anonymous tip that led to the raid. The call came from a burner phone, but it was tied back to Liam through a string of texts and receipts. The detectives dug deeper and found his fingerprints on some of the items they'd taken from my apartment. It wasn't immediate, and for a couple of weeks, I sat there thinking my life was over, but eventually the truth came out. When they told me I was being released, I couldn't even react. I just sat there in disbelief as they unlocked the cell door. It turned out that Liam had gone to extreme lengths to set me up. He'd made extra keys when we were together, and he'd been sneaking into my apartment when I wasn't home all along. He must have planted the bag of weed first as a test to see if I'd notice. When I didn't call the police or make a fuss, he escalated until he had enough to make me look like a dealer. I moved out of that apartment soon after. Even though the locks were changed, I couldn't stand the idea that Liam had been in there, going through my things. Ryan helped me pack everything up, and we found a new place together across town. In the end, the whole ordeal reminded me why I'd left Liam in the first place. He wasn't just someone who refused to change, he was dangerous. If I'd stayed with him, I don't even want to think about where I'd be now. I broke up with my girlfriend Emily at the end of February of this year. We'd been dating for just over a year, and it was long enough for me to realize she wasn't someone I wanted to build a future with. At first things were fine, but over time, she became more jealous and unpredictable. She would question me about every woman I worked with, and if I didn't answer her texts fast enough, she'd accuse me of ignoring her on purpose. The final straw came when she showed up uninvited at a poker night with my friends and started interrogating one of them about whether I'd ever flirted with his girlfriend. After that, I told her it was over. She didn't take it well. She started crying, then shouting, then threatening to hurt herself if I didn't change my mind. I tried to calm her down, but she cut me off and said, "If you won't be with me, no one else will." To me, that sounded like a threat, but I didn't think she really meant it. People say things like that when they're hurt, and I figured she'd get over it after a while. For a few weeks, I didn't hear much from her. She sent a couple of long texts that I didn't answer, and then nothing else for a long time. I thought maybe she'd finally accepted it. I started using dating apps again, and matched with a few women, but most of them unmatched me within a day or two, without explanation. I thought it was normal, since people can be flaky online, especially since I'm short and kind of ugly. It kept happening, though. One woman even sent me a message saying, "Nice try, but I know what you're really into," and then blocked me. I had no idea what she meant. Around the same time, some new co-workers at the office started acting differently toward me. I joined a small marketing firm a few months before the breakup, and at first everyone was friendly. But suddenly, everyone was really crappy to me, and a few people stopped including me in group lunches. I asked one of the guys I sat near about it, and he said, "Man, I don't know what's going on with your online stuff, but maybe you should keep that private." I asked him what he meant, but he wouldn't say much else. The worst part was when my sister called me one night. She asked why I would post a video saying disgusting things about women and bragging about hurting people in high school. I told her I had no idea what she was talking about. She said she saw the video herself, and it looked and sounded exactly like me. She said, "If this is some kind of joke, you need to stop." I had to convince her that it wasn't me at all. Emily was good with technology. She worked in IT security and used to show me how easy it was to spoof accounts. She'd even joked once that she could ruin someone's life with just their phone number and a couple of photos. At the time, I laughed, but now it wasn't funny. I started looking into it and found multiple fake accounts in my name. On Instagram, there were pages with my pictures, but captions I'd never written. On Facebook, there was a profile using old family photos from my real account, but with disturbing posts about extreme politics and violence. Even LinkedIn had a clone account with my name and photo, but the job listed was content creator, and it linked to a site full of rants and crazy videos. I spent hours every night reporting these accounts, but for every one that got taken down, another popped up. The videos were the creepiest thing. They weren't just simple edits, they were deep fakes. The first one I saw had me saying hateful things about women, and the voice was perfect. Friends started asking questions, and some didn't believe me when I explained. Others said they didn't know what to think. At work, I was called into my manager's office. She asked me to explain why a client emailed her about the videos of me circulating online. I denied it, but I could tell she wasn't sure. She said the company couldn't afford any bad publicity and told me to get it cleaned up fast. I knew it was Emily, but I didn't want to confront her until I had proof. I went to a lawyer, but he said there wasn't much that could be done unless I could tie the accounts directly to her. I filed police reports, but nothing happened. They said online impersonation cases were hard to pursue without clear evidence. In the meantime, my dating life was destroyed. Every time I matched with someone, they'd either ghost me or confront me with screenshots of things I'd posted. Some of them were horrifying. One fake account had me writing about wanting to stalk women from my office. Another claimed I'd been arrested for assault in college. None of it was true, but it was convincing. I finally reached out to Emily directly. I called her one night, and she picked up right away, almost like she'd been waiting for me. I told her I knew she was behind it, and that she needed to stop. She just said, "I'm not trying to ruin your life. I'm just making sure no one ever trusts you enough to date you again." Her voice was calm in a really creepy way, almost like we were talking about the weather. I eventually gave up and stopped trying to talk to her. In the meantime, my social life collapsed. I lost a lot of friends, and a few stopped returning my calls altogether. I understood why, even if they believed me, who wanted to deal with that kind of baggage. At work, I kept my head down and avoided attention, but the damage was done. I didn't get assigned to any new projects, and I could tell management didn't trust me anymore. I hit rock bottom when my mother called, crying. She'd seen a fake post on Facebook where I mocked her and my dad. I had to go to her house and show her my real accounts, walking her through everything so she'd believe me. It took nearly a year before things started to quiet down. The fake account slowed, maybe because she got bored, or maybe because she realized she'd already done enough damage. I never got an apology, or any acknowledgement from her. The last time I saw her was at a grocery store parking lot. She looked right at me, smiled politely, and walked past without saying a word. The ending wasn't satisfying in the traditional sense. I didn't catch her, and I didn't clear my name completely, but I learned how to live with it. I tightened my circle of friends, stuck with the ones who truly trusted me, and let go of everyone else. At work, I eventually transferred to another office in a different city, where no one knew about the fake accounts. Starting fresh helped, even if the fear of it happening again never fully went away. In the end, I realized that Emily wasn't trying to ruin my life in a loud or obvious way. She wanted me isolated, and she succeeded for a while, but she didn't get everything. I still had my family, my work, and a few good friends.